Hey guys. So this is episode 1 of 2 of my um, baseball career podcast. The idea of this is that I basically just tell you guys some different things about my baseball career. Um, things that you guys probably saw on the field, some things that you probably didn't see. Um, kind of my thought process through. This one is going to be kind of more time, like it'll expand over more time. The second episode will be more like thought processes and specific moments. But it will only span, I think, 4 years, technically 5. So, yeah. After doing these 2 episodes, I will then go and probably do 3 episodes, kind of talking about my whole life up to this point. And I'll just break that into 3 groups as well. If you guys have any more ideas of what you guys think I should start uploading, once that is all done, I'm open to all suggestions. So, yeah, I'll just get right into it. So, the first thing that I'll bring up is before I even started really playing on like a team or whatever, my parents always tell me that I was big on like hitting the ball up the stairs. So before I could even, I would stand at the bottom of the stairs of our house, and I would take this little like plush ball and a plush bat, and I'd hit the ball up the stairs. It would roll down, and then I'd hit it up again, and I would continue to do that for days on end until um, would get stuck up there. Then I would crawl because I couldn't walk. I would crawl up the stairs, grab it, and bring it back down. And I would continue to do that until we had to eat or I had to go to bed or something like that. So that was most of like early childhood. When I turned 4, I became a Yankees fan. And this was mostly because, number one, they just got a new stadium, and my family took me to a game in 2008 when I was 3, and a game in 2009 when I was 4, once when it was the old stadium, once when it was the new stadium. And then also in that year was the year that the Yankees won the World Series, so I watched a bunch of Yankees baseball at the time, and it was really cool. That was how I became a Yankees fan. I know a lot of Yankees fans don't love to hear me talk about the 27 championships, but it's the reason that I'm a Yankees fan. Then about the time that I turned 5, I started joining T-ball. My parents signed me up. We have a local literally not too far from here. And yeah, so I joined the local T-ball league. When I first started, I took it way too seriously. This kind of continued throughout, like, I don't know, the rest of literally, but I took it way too seriously. I was like leading off bases, not like I was stealing, but I would like think about it and stuff like that. I was keeping track of when we won and lost, which, by the way, if you don't know with T-ball, everybody hits, everybody scores, and then the game ends. Like, that's it. It really is not anything. Like, there's no such thing as winning and losing in T-ball, but for me there was, and I kept track, and we won a lot. We didn't win every game, somehow, but we won a lot. And then after that came coach pitch, which was basically a lot like T-ball, except the coaches would pitch and outs actually counted. So us winning and losing actually did kind of matter, and I kept track of that as well, and I kept track on how many hits I had. But it wouldn't like change how I felt, like if I didn't hit well, I didn't care. I just kept going. But usually like I could, if I hit the ball in play, I would be safe at first, as enjoying everything and taking it way too seriously. Then came when we actually started having kids pitch, which was U10. This was when I started having some teammates that stick around for a long time. And it was also around this time that I started to take the game a little bit more seriously. Not like or anything, not like that. That actually kind of went away because I started to learn the game about U10. But it was kind of coming into my game was I was caring more about how I was doing. Outs actually mattered to me, wins actually mattered to me, and things like that. They mattered more. So when it would actually like affect me in some way. Like if I didn't hit well for a few games, it would actually affect me. And this continued for probably the rest of my life. So up until about when I turned 12, I went to and I'll get more into this at another time. I went to a private school, so I didn't really go to school with all these kids, but I had these kids, I went to the same school. And eventually I did end up joining a bunch of them at their school. But when I turned about I think 12. So 11 was my first year of U12. And just to backtrack a little bit, just because this is going to matter a little bit more, when I was in U10, it was my last year of U10. On our first game, the other team didn't bring enough pitchers. The other team needed a pitcher. So our coach looked at me and said, "Have you ever pitched before?" And he said, "Well, go out and pitch, pitch against us." So I went out and I pitched for the first time ever, and I struck the first 3 batters out. I struck my own team out. Then, as I went back over to my position, because in U10 I played shortstop, mostly because I was too small to really play anywhere else. So I went back over to play shortstop, and my coach yelled out, "What are you doing? Go back, you're pitching again." So I went out and I pitched against the other team, and I struck them out in a row 3 times, and I felt great. Little did I know that was probably the best pitching performance I'll ever give, but I gave it, so I was happy about that. Basically, a lot of what I learned in U10 was, I'm not going to be a pitcher. This is probably the highest level I ever pitch, but, I get to pitch, so enjoy it. I can take the pressure off because I'm not a pitcher, and that's just how it is. So fast forward U12, I start down there, and our team was terrible. I mean, it's not even, that's not an exaggeration. It is literally the worst team I've ever been a part of. It will forever be the worst team I have ever seen. And we did not win a game. So, I mean, you want to talk about the Chicago White Sox from last year, but not winning anything. We literally didn't win anything. And that was bad. It was bad. Yeah, I mean, I played alright. I ended up getting selected for the All-Star team, but my parents said that we were going on vacation that week, so I wasn't able to play on the All-Star team. So it kind of sucked, but I was okay with it. It was fine. Just to be able to be selected was pretty cool, especially my first year in U12. And then going into my second year, it was my last year of Little League. Again, I took it way too seriously. I remember my parents telling me that there's one time I went into school and I told my teacher that I couldn't do any schoolwork that day because I had to pitch that night and I needed to save my arm. It's a true story. I don't know if it worked. Knowing my knowledge of how I've been able to talk to teachers back then probably didn't work. Maybe I did something. I don't know. But it probably didn't work. Either way. Yeah, that was an actual thing I did. That's how seriously I took this. I treated every single game like I was in the major leagues. And it all kind of came to a head in my final game. And I'll never forget this game. We had only won 2 games up to this point, and we were taking on the other team, who I believe also had only 2 wins on the year. So we had a better year, but I will say the only team that we beat twice was the team that we were going up against. So we only beat them twice. They beat another team once, and then another team once, kind of on lucky games. But we beat them twice, and then we were facing them again. We played them 3 times in the season, and we lost to them once. So it was kind of it stayed a big deal, as a game. But I remember we were down late. I think we were down 6 runs going into the last inning. So, the game was kind of chalked up. We had the bottom of the lineup coming up, which we don't know anything about Little League. When the bottom of the lineup comes up in Little League in the last inning, the game's over. They're not going to hit anything. Those kids in the bottom of the lineup are usually kids that their parents just told them are going to be in the game and, that they have to play baseball and they don't want to. Other option for kids in the bottom of the lineup is they're new to the game and coaches don't know what to do with them, so the bottom of the lineup is kind of a caution tape. Yeah, I mean, for a while I started at the bottom of the lineup and, we'll get more into that as time goes on. But anyway, I was the leadoff batter for our team, and I was kind of expecting that this was it. This was going to be how the season was going to end. And then all of a sudden, before I could even really blink, we put up 3 runs, and we had the bases loaded with 1 out. And I was up to the plate. And if you also don't know much about baseball, I will tell you this. Every single kid in all over the world has had a dream once where they were batting in the last inning with the bases loaded down 3, and they had a walk-off home run. And I had never hit a home run before. And I thought that this was a pretty cool time to do that. I was ready for it. First pitch, with everything I had, and I hit this little blooper over first base, and it landed right past the first baseman. And the first baseman ran back to go catch it, and the right fielder ran in to come and catch it, and they ran into each other. And I was running like a madman because I was running hard. So I ran like crazy. The two people that were the two runners in front of me were number one in the batting lineup, so they didn't really fully understand what they were doing. But I got to first, and they were so shocked that the outfielders ran into each other that they stopped running. So I then started screaming at them to start running, and eventually they did. And so I ended up with a double, scored 2 runs. The tying run was now in third. I was the winning run at second, and there's 1 out. So I still got a big hit, but at the moment, it kind of sucked that I wasn't able to, hit that winning run and, have all the glory and everything. But then came this other kid, Adam, and he struck out. So we were down to our final out. Was it our final out? No, Caleb came first. He was one of my teammates. We've been teammates for 10 years now. We started back on U10. He came up with a 1 out. So backtracking a little, he came up with 1 out, hit a ground ball back to the pitcher, and somehow managed to beat it out at first base. And then we had bases loaded, 1 out. Next guy struck out. So left us down to our final out. Bases loaded, 2 outs, bottom of the ninth. Down by 1. I was a winning run. And the next batter hit this really hard ground ball towards shortstop. I kind of turned and looked and watched the ball roll right past him. I went running with everything that I had. We weren't allowed to slide head first, so I slid on both of my knees like a rock star. Arms spread wide, walk off. I'm jumping up in the air screaming. Caleb, who's now on second, is jumping up in the air screaming. Xavier's jumping up in the air screaming. Everybody in our dugout has no idea what's going on. All the fans are screaming. It was really cool. It was a really cool moment. Eventually we were able to go and, jump around and hug them and beat them up as baseball players do. I don't know why we do that, but we do it. And yeah, it was a really cool moment. It was really cool to end my U12 career like that. I wish it ended, a little differently, but you don't really get to choose how things end. You can only choose how you handle it and how you can control it. I had a pretty cool lesson that day, and that was that, not everything's going to turn out how you want it, but the celebration is still there. Obviously, hitting a walk-off grand slam would have been really cool, and I would have gotten a ton of the glory, and, I'd be telling you how I hit a walk-off grand slam, and I'd tell everybody how I hit a walk-off grand slam, but that wasn't what I was made to do. I was made to just keep the game going. And I did that. I did my job. And then it came up to the next person to do the same job, and he did his job. And then, so one thing that I learned in baseball is that, and in life, honestly, is that, you can still do a job without doing what you expected. You can still get there without doing what you expected you were going to do, And I feel like that's a really good lesson to learn. It's not easy to always just hand it off to somebody else and let them do, whatever. But, if I had hit the walk-off grand slam, I would have gotten a ton of the glory, but my teammates wouldn't have had another at-bat. They wouldn't have had another chance to change things. It become a full team glory thing, it would have just been me. And I didn't want that. I wanted my whole team to do it. So if I had the chance to go back and change it, I would not. I would not. I would leave it exactly the same, do the exact same thing over and over and over again. I would never change it because it really was able to allow our full team to be able and do this together. And it was really cool. So I finished up with that, was happy with the season, and then came All-Star picks. I just had a really good season. I was kind of expecting it. And my parents pulled me outside. They were going to talk to me about it, and they told me that I didn't make it. And that was pretty tough to hear, when you're 12 years old, that, something that you got last year, you don't get this year. It was really tough to hear. And then they mentioned that my brother got it for U10 because my brother was 9 at the moment. So I had a pretty big choice to make if I was going to, bum everybody out by going around and saying I didn't make it, or if I was going to talk big about my brother, which is another lesson about baseball and life that I have enjoyed learning. That is like, you're going to fail. The game of baseball is a sport to fail in. It's the failing game. You could be successful 3 out of 10 times and, you're in the Hall of Fame. In basketball, if Steph Curry shot 3 for 10, the entire world would freak out and go, what the heck's wrong with him? If, if Patrick Mahomes was passing and he was 3 for 10, people would be calling him washed and, not really the GOAT because he can't pass. If a ref of any sport was making the right call 3 out of 10 times, he wouldn't make it past Little League because he'd be a terrible umpire. But in baseball, as a player, if you succeed 3 out of 10 times, you're seen as a really good player. And that's not, that's a really cool way to look at things. But a lot of people also talk about, like, you could succeed 3 out of 10 times. But the other part of it is you fail 7 out of 10 times. And people, especially other coaches, don't look at how you succeed your 3 out of 10 times. They look at how you fail your 7 out of 10 times and how you're going to handle that 7th time that you fail and if you'll be able to bounce back. And as a baseball player, you learn that you get the opportunity when you strike out, when you go back to the dugout, that you can throw your helmet, you can be upset, you can be mad, and you can put all the attention on yourself. Or you can go out and you can cheer for your teammate and you can push for your teammate to have one of those 3 successes. And when he has it, you can celebrate with him, you can push with him, and then the next time that you get a success, he's more likely to back you up as well. Especially if he's failing. Especially in the game of baseball, we learn a lot about our failures. We learn how we react to things like we fail. And I tried to put myself into a position where if I failed, I'd be mad at myself for 5 seconds. Sometimes I would try and do less, and sometimes I'd end up doing more because, it was a bigger moment. But I would try and do that, where I only was upset with myself for a few seconds during the game, and then I could be more upset about it after the game. When there's nothing more that I can do, I can be more upset about it, fix it then, and then move on. But so, in that moment when I was told that I wasn't on an all-star team, but my brother was, I was given the opportunity to do the same thing. I was told that I had failed. However, my teammate, my brother, succeeded, and I was given the opportunity to decide if I was going to celebrate with him because he made it, or if I was going to sulk in the fact that I didn't and force him to be upset. And as a baseball player, I knew that if I did this in a game and I decided, I'm going to bring the whole team down because I'm not doing good, then that becomes an issue, and coaches don't want you if you do that. But if you go out and you go, hey, I'm going to celebrate because, this guy's doing so good right now, then coaches enjoy seeing that because they understand that you're still there for the team even when you're not doing so good, So I came in the house and I gave myself a minute, to be upset. And then when I came back in and I saw the family, I decided to celebrate with my brother on the fact that he made the team, and it was really cool. And I had a good time. Then shortly afterwards, I was in a Watertown league where I played with this team. I can't even remember the team name, but I know that our coach was very strict, which is very different from what I was used to. And our team was very good. I was not very good because it was a new team and a new league and I didn't know what I was doing. But I was pretty good. So shortly after that, I was talked to by a coach to join a team called the Blizz. It was a travel team made a bunch of people from my high school, and the goal was to create the best high school team in school history and hopefully win a state championship in the future. That was the goal of this team. We would travel around New York and eventually around the U.S., playing in different tournaments. If we won a specific tournament, we would never play there again, and we would always play up an age group. The only tournament that we would play in after, if we won, was like a memorial tournament. So we have the Willie Putnam tournament nearby. We were willing to play in that one again if we won it, no matter what. And we won that tournament quite a few times, but we would play in it every year because it was a memorial. So I joined this team late in the summer when I was 12, and a bunch of these guys, like I had played against in Little League, so I knew these guys a little bit. Didn't know them too much just because they went to different schools, but I knew of them like as their baseball style. I knew what they could do. I knew what they did in Little League, and they knew what I could do. They knew what I did in Little League. So it was really cool. And the end, I just finished off the summer with them. I think I only played like a tournament or two with them. I didn't even go to their school yet, but it was really cool to hear that from a coach like him, to basically see me as a future high school ball player at that young. It was really cool to see. And I always looked up to the Blizz because they were a really cool team. There were all these really cool guys that went on to be high school studs in the game of baseball. So it was really cool to be named a part of that. So moving on, I went into, when I turned 13, I then moved schools and I joined these guys. But going into that summer, we went to Cooperstown, which, if you don't know, is heaven for baseball, where we played in a tournament called All-Star Village. It is a 5-day tournament. You play I don't even know how many games we played. Probably 8, 9, maybe 10 or 11 games. And, they have a whole bunch of different fields. I think they have 13 fields down there. It's ridiculous. But it's a lot of fun, and it's really cool. And I was so happy that I got to do this. Guys like Bryce Harper played there when he was 13. Adrian Beltre brought his son down recently. If you guys don't know who those are, look them up. They're big-time baseball players, is really all I'm going to give you. But they're big. They're big time. And so for us to be able to say, we shared a field with them, it was really cool. And at the same time, we are also currently sharing the field with a bunch of kids from California. There were teams from California showing up. There were teams that were flying in from Oregon and Washington. All over the country were flying for this tournament. And it was ridiculous. Some of the competition we played was absolutely insane. I wish I got the names of half the guys that I played with, because I'm sure that some of them are up in the moves now. It's crazy. But when we showed up, we talked to our coach about wins and losses, and he said, if you guys win 1 game, I'll be proud of you guys. If you guys win 2 games, I'll be ecstatic. If you guys win 3 games, it'll be absolutely insane. You will tie the record for our travel ball team for wins in this league. And our team went, well, what about 4 wins? And he said, there's no way you guys win 4 wins. And we're like, well, what if we do? He goes, if you guys get 4 wins, I will jump into the pool outside of our dorm in all of my clothes. And it was, by the way, the pool was freezing, and the clothes that he wears were work clothes, business casual clothes, button down, khakis, all that. So it was a big deal if we were going to be able to win 4 games. But again, when you're playing against some really good competition, the idea of you winning 4 games is ridiculous. Long story short, we had 2 wins, and we were down by 3 in the bottom of the last inning, bases loaded. It was an elimination game. Real good chance that we were done here. And one of our teammates hit a walk-off grand slam. Easily one of the greatest moments I think I've ever been a part of. They had a mini Fenway Park. And he just hit it right over that green monster. And when I tell you tears were shed, every single person on that field was crying because we just saved ourselves. We got our 3rd win. It was one of the most intense moments I think I've ever seen. It was indescribable, really, was how it was. Another little key piece about this tournament is if you have a game scheduled, you're playing that game. They do not do reschedule. So if it rains, what happens is they'll move the games back. And they don't have a specific time where it ends. So we had one game, I think it was our first game of the whole tournament. We were scheduled to play under the lights at 7, 8 p.m.-ish, around that time. And we would have been done at 10 o'clock. We would have gotten back to the dorms and slept. By the way, you were given a dorm. As a team, we were given a dorm. We all slept in the dorm, and then we'd wake up, and they had breakfast. They had a tent that you can go and eat breakfast at. And then after that, you would walk into the village where you would play games and all of that. And then you would go and eat with your team, come back, play, eat with your team, walk around the village, go to bed. That was basically what this was for 5 days. So we had a game that was supposed to be scheduled at 8, and it would have ended at 10. We would have gotten to bed. It would have been fine. And again, we're 13 years old. We're not adults. Now I would have been whatever. But it started to rain, so they ended up postponing all of the games before us and moving them back. Well, the issue with moving them back is that moves us even further back. Well, instead of canceling our game, they ended up having us play at 1 in the morning, We had a game starting at 1 in the morning. So we went to bed at like 7 at night, woke up at like 11:30 at night, walked down to the field, warmed up at midnight, and was playing a game at 1 in the morning. And I think we lost that game, but we didn't really care because we just wanted to get to bed. It was brutal, but it was honestly, it was pretty cool because not even the major leaguers do that, and they get paid to do that. So it was really cool. And then so we won the third game on a walk-off grand slam, and then in our next game we won, moving us to the semifinals of the losers bracket, which we also called like the small town bracket because really teams like from LA were in the winners bracket. We were a small town in upstate New York. There was no way we were going to compete with them. So the idea of us making it to the semifinals of any bracket was really cool. We ended up losing it in a heartbreaker, but we got our fourth win. So the next day, our coach ran out and jumped in the pool in full office clothes. It was amazing. It was a really cool bonding experience for our whole team to be able to have that. And, we grew up together. We practically grew up together. Like I know every single guy that was on that team, and most of us, I think like 3 of us were not on our senior year team. I mean, there's probably more than 3 of us that weren't on that team that were also on our varsity year, but I at least played with them in high school, and the team chemistry was really cool, and it was because of tournaments like this. So after that, I then started Modified, and we ended up having to do cuts for Modified, but I still made the team. I was like the 18th guy, so I didn't really play too much in Modified, but they made sure that we would get some playing time. And when I did get playing time, I hit okay. It wasn't great, but, learning the new pitching, the new distances, and all of that was not easy. But, we started to figure it out and get things moving. And then my second year of Modified, a bunch of the guys that I was teammates with moved up to JV, but I was not asked to move up to JV. I was asked to stay down on Modified, which was a little hurtful, but I didn't really, I understood that I was not good enough to be on JV yet, and I needed to prove myself to be good enough for JV. So I worked really hard, and in my second year of varsity, I believe I batted a full 1,000, which if you don't know what that means that every time I went up to the plate, I got a hit. I never got out once. And that is nearly impossible to do in a normal league, but I started to really find myself as a baseball player around this time, and I started to hit better. I got a coach named Dan Almonte. He was a personal hitting coach for me. He taught me a lot, and I really started to figure out how to be a good hitter. I was never really a power hitter, but I started to really find some good contact hitting and become an actual base hit guy. And in that season, again, I never got out in Modified. It was really such a cool moment. We ended up winning all of our games for both of my years at Modified. We were completely undefeated, the only 2 undefeated teams in that coach's career. And, we were a part of it. It was really cool. And then came my 9th grade year. So into that summer, just before, just after the Modified season, we played a game against this one high school team. And this is the only thing that I really remember. We played in this, I don't think it was the Wood Bat League, but we played in a league in a nearby town. And I started to really find myself as a hitter. At one point, we were getting no hit as a team, and I was the last hitter for good reason. But I was the last hitter, and I got a base hit. We were using metal bats, and I got a base hit, and it actually bent my bat. I'm not even kidding. There was a literal curve in the bat because I just got jammed. But I ended up getting a base hit. Really cool moment. And then the rest of the team got more confidence because, if I can get a hit, so can they. And then our team just went crazy and just hit the ball like crazy. And but it was also around this time that I started to find out that if I was going to get some playing time later on, then I was going to need a change because the people that were currently playing at shortstop and second, where I usually played, were a lot better than me. I mean, I'll say it. One of them is currently playing not currently because it's now summer, but is playing for his college on his baseball team, and the other one, instead of playing baseball, he's a goalie for his college, and they both go to the same college, but one of them is playing baseball in college, and the other one would probably be playing baseball in college, but is instead a goalie in soccer, and he's really good. So, hats off to them too. But they were the middle midfield, and they had a pretty firm grip on that, and they were very good. So I was not going to argue playing time over them, but I knew that I needed to get some. So I think it was my last year in Modified going into that summer, I really started to work on being an outfielder. And I had dabbled my way into the outfield every now and then, but I never really fully developed being an outfielder. So I spent the better part of that summer really trying to figure out how to be a good outfielder. Tracking fly balls, throwing the ball from deep, reading bounces in the outfield, really starting to try and figure out what I needed to do to be a good outfielder. Because if I was going to play, it was not going to be in the middle infield like I usually did. I was going to have to find a way to play in the outfield. So I was starting to put it to some pretty good use, and I started to find myself on the field a little more often. I had some bumps in the road here and there, but I figured it out. And then we played in one game in this Watertown League where I came up to the plate with the bases loaded. It was in the championship game of this league. I believe our team was up by 2 at the moment, and the pitcher threw me a pitch right down the middle, and I popped it up. It went right over the shortstop's head, and I took off running. And the shortstop came up and threw it home, so I rounded first and went to second for the throw. And he threw it over the catcher's head, so we had 2 runners score there. And then the runner who was on first, he was a very fast runner, rounded third and started heading for home, so I took off for third because I knew that they were going to try and make a play at home. And their catcher went back and grabbed the ball and flipped it to their pitcher who was covering home plate and missed the pitcher, and the ball rolled into the infield. So he scored, and I got to third. And then I looked and noticed that there was no one in the infield because they had all ran towards home once the first ball went over the catcher's head. So the ball was just kind of rolling in no man's land. So I decided to take off running for home, and I ended up sliding in safely. And it was my first ever home run. It was in a championship game. It was a grand slam. It was inside the park. And was it legit? It was a single with a bunch of errors. But in my book, it was my first ever home run. I hit all the bases on one swing. Nobody else came up to the plate. So I took it as my first home run, and it was just before I was going into high school. So, I absolutely loved it. Later in the game, one of my teammates hit a ball right down the line. It hit off a wall before the left fielder even really got to it. He was rounding bases. He ended up making a very clean home run. He ended up getting the game ball from that game for a good reason, because he actually got a home run. We ended up winning that game by a lot and being champions then. But, our team didn't win a ton of championships for the travel ball team because we played against a lot better competition. So at the start and towards the end, we really didn't win a lot. But kind of in the middle, we found some very good success because we were a very good team. And then going into my 9th grade year was COVID. It was 2020, and COVID hit. So we did not have a high school season. And that was going to be the year myself and all of my travel ball teammates were all going to be on the same JV team, and it was going to be very nice, and we were going to have a ton of fun and probably win a lot of games, if not every game. But it did not happen because COVID hit, so our season got canceled. And then in the summer, we played in one league where it was the same Watertown League as before, and we won the championship then. And that was the last. That was it. That was our last. It was the only baseball that we played all year. It was not easy, especially as a team that was expected. We were expecting to be big. But yeah, so going into my 10th grade year, I was given a very big decision that I didn't know if I was ready for or not. All of my teammates were called up to play on varsity, and I was actually asked to go up and play on varsity, but I knew I was not going to be handed this, I wasn't going to be getting playtime because the outfielders that they had then were very good. And I knew that the competition that we had played over the past few years were varsity level. We were not playing against JV level teams. We were playing against varsity teams, and in some cases we were playing against some college players, and we were winning games. So we were a very good team as a whole. I don't think there was any one player that really stood out, but as a team we were very good. Our main focus was our defense, and it's probably the greatest defensive team I've ever played on because we just knew everything about every team and every single player on the field. But they were all up in varsity, and I was going to, I was given kind of an option if I wanted to go up and play on varsity or stay down and play on JV. And I know the coach on JV. I'm very close with him, and he basically told me, if you come down and play on JV, you'll obviously be given a pretty easy role. So you could play on JV. You'd get a shortstop spot. You'd be probably a little bit of a pitcher whenever we're winning by enough. Or, maybe we'll even have to just pitch just because. And it was not an easy decision to figure out. Because, everybody always wants to say, like, oh, I played 3 years on varsity. I was a 3-year varsity athlete. That's how good I was. They couldn't keep me down on JV. I was too good. I would have been 4 years, but COVID, brag about that because that would have been a lie anyways. But, it was an option for me to be able to say that I was 3 years on varsity along with everybody else that was on my team, that we all on varsity for 3 years. But at the same time, I also knew, like, if I was on varsity, the only thing that I'd be really good for is base running. I wasn't, like, insanely fast, but I loved the game so much, I knew it in and out. So, being a base runner, I was pretty quick to get some bases that I probably shouldn't have just because I saw something. But at the same time, I wasn't the fastest kid on the team. I left that for a center fielder. He was also like 6'4". He's currently a pitcher at his college. Shout out to him. Him and I became very close as time went on, especially into high school. And yeah, every single one of these guys I became very close with. I miss teaming up with these guys, especially in my senior year. I miss teaming up with these guys. Back in my sophomore, again, back to this sophomore decision, I just really wasn't sure what I was going to do. Again, it was either the option of pride of being on varsity for 3 years, playing more because I'd be on the field and, I'd just be playing the game. So I will, I'm sure a lot of you who know me know what I chose, but I'm going to save that for the second episode. I'm going to end this episode here. This is about the time that I was kind of hoping to hit, just around 45 minutes. I think I'm pretty sure the next episode is going to be shorter than this, just because it will just cover the decision, my sophomore year, junior year, senior year, and then my 2 years at college, and then kind of end it there. I'll just have more like in-between stories about all of that. And yeah, so thank you guys for listening. I appreciate all of the support that you guys have given me. If you guys have any ideas for a podcast for me to do in the future, let me know. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment and let me know. If you're seeing this on Spotify or whatever, just DM me on Instagram at jmancommentating. That's jman_commentating over on Instagram. It's also over on TikTok, so you can also do it there. So once again, thank you guys so much for listening. I'm J-Man Commentating, and this was episode 1 of my baseball career. So have a great day. God bless. Let's go.